Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I need to get a motion to go into special session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. First order of business is the approval of an open container exemption, Schmankelstube at Chris Kindle Mark.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that Mayor and Council approve an exemption from the City of Hagerstown's open containers regulation under Section 173-6 of the Code of the City of Hagerstown for the Schmankelstube at Chris Kindle Market on December 1st, 2018 at University Plaza. This replaces the approval made on March 27th, 2018 for South Potomac Street.
Second.
As I recall,
Emily seconded. Discussion.
this wine, as I recall, I remember last year, they had a very specific alcoholic beverage. Right, yeah, yeah, I'm fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of conversion of 2 part-time staff to full-time police record specialists.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for Mayor and Council approval for the conversion of 2 part-time staff to full-time staff to support the police records function. These positions will increase the full-time position count by 2 and will begin 15 October 2018. Both positions will be AFS CME 1540 members, and annual salaries will be per the current contract. FY19 funding will be from HPD's FY19 vacancy savings and will be added to future budgets to be approved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And the approval of the HPD cadet program.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for Mayor and Council approval of the HPD cadet program. This program would entail the hiring of up to 6 cadets. These positions will be phased in and will not increase the full-time position count. The program will begin no sooner than 15 October 2018. The anticipated annual salary will start at $25,502 and will be reevaluated annually. FY19 funding will be from HPD's FY19 vacancy savings and will be added to future budgets to be approved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, out of the special session, the work session, we have Jessica Green, Executive Director of the Maryland Theater, with some important stuff.
Important stuff. Thank you for having me. Well, as you just introduced me, I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Theater, Jessica Green. I'm here today to just share some brief but very exciting news that we have officially completed Phase 1 of the construction for our expansion project. Morgan Keller Construction is doing a wonderful job today, as the Herald Mail reads. Thank you very much, CJ, for that wonderful article. What this means is that we are officially reopening in an occupied construction. We're preparing to host over 150 events starting tomorrow through June 2015. I believe you received a packet detail that shows a rendering of what the temporary entrance will look like for the next 9 months, although if you walk down South Potomac Street, it's finished. You can see it for yourself in real life. So our hope is that the community will continue to support the theater as they always have and not stay away from the downtown with all of the construction surrounding us. We hope they'll pardon our dust. And during this Phase 2, the actual expansion building will be constructed in front of the theater where our courtyard once stood. So you'll actually be able to see something happening for the next 9 months. Of course, we want to thank the county and city staff for everything that they've done for us over the first several months of the project, from thinking about Michelle in finance, thinking about our funding, the inspection and coding staff on site not once but twice a day. Literally without them, this project would not be on schedule where it is today. So I know that that department often gets blamed for delaying projects, and I'm here today to say they enabled us to see this project through on time, on schedule. So they've really been wonderful. And I'm sure there are many staff members that are working behind the scenes that maybe even I'm not aware of that have helped the project make progress. So Of course, thank you to the mayor and council for all your support on the project. I know some of you have done videos for us and spoken publicly about your support of the project, so we really appreciate that. I want to share a little update on fundraising. We still have a remaining gap of about $3 million. We have been excited to learn that the Fletcher Foundation has made a $500,000 matching grant pledge to us. They've paid the first $100,000 to us already this year, and so what that means is we are launching our fourth quarter public campaign for the first time. Our fundraising campaign will become public, and we are asking our audience members to make small contributions, $25, $50, even $100, and the Fletcher Foundation is going to be matching each one of those. So for now, your $1 donation becomes $2 and so on. So our hope is that we can raise an additional $1 million with that challenge grant, and we've started a marketing campaign already. You may have seen some videos on social media. We'll be having some other online marketing and newspaper ads going out about that, and we'll be making pre-show announcements too to really rally our audience and our community members behind it. As far as making a small pledge, it will be available on our website and also on Facebook. You can be entered to win prizes this fourth quarter, and it's a quick and easy PayPal process. It's basically plug in your name and credit card information and you're done. So very easy. If anybody wants to do a little marketing video for us of 30 seconds or less, let me know. We'll be glad to have you. I think that's everything. Just wanted to share the good news.
How's your fishbowl?
I'm sorry?
How's your fishbowl?
Fishbowl. Our fishbowl is a clean, very nicely constructed, a bit small space, but it's temporary. He's talking about our temporary office. We're happy not to be in a musty old building anymore. We're getting to know each other very well. How's that for an answer?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. Scott, utility tax discussion.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before I start on utility tax, just to clean something up from last week, I think Councilman Alshire had asked about when it comes to assessment increases, there's a 10% cap that's a state cap, and then the city set a 5% increase. The question was asked if there was any limit as to limiting a decrease in assessed value. Talked to folks downstate, and to their knowledge, there is not. So there is no 10% decrease limit, and there is nothing that they could find that would not allow the city to set a limit that an assessment could decrease. They were forwarding the question to the AG's office. I haven't heard back on that yet. Probably another week or so, the way that goes. But to their knowledge, there was no limit and no restriction that would say we couldn't set our own limit as to capping a decrease. Okay?
Keep us posted on it.
Sure will. The utility tax discussion, I thought I'd just kind of briefly explain the three taxes that we are able to collect as a municipality. The two taxes that get the most press, so to speak, are the real estate property tax and the personal property tax. Real property tax in Maryland, you got the lowdown on that last week. Every July 1st, we send out tax bills based upon information we receive from the state that is cut off in May for the previous year based upon the assessed value or the change in assessed value over a 3-year period because we have a triennial assessment. We get that file in mid-June. We process it through. We create tax bills in July. We send those out. If we offer a discount of a minimal percentage, 0.025% of the tax bill in July, if you pay between July 1st and July 31st, It goes to base tax starting August 1st through the end of September, and then starting October 1st, it's a 1% on the unpaid balance each month as you go forward. You can pay, you have annual payments, you can be on a semi-annual billing. Interest does not start to accrue on a semi-annual billing until that semi-annual billing is due. We have some like that. It's owner-occupied homes that get that ability to do that. That's all based upon the state and how that parcel was assessed. In August, we also get what's called a supplemental tax bill, and that's for any property that has been that has transferred ownership between May 1st and June 30th. And then, so we'll send, it's usually about 250 properties that we'll send out a tax bill for, and then it goes through the same process from that point on. So that's real property. Of course, that is by far the biggest revenue generator that we have for the city. Personal property tax is the other tax based upon commercial properties and the property that they use to operate their business. These are, this is a voluntarily reported tax that a commercial entity will send to the state. The state takes the information based upon the criteria that they require from the companies. It's like an annual report, fixed asset report, and they will do an assessment based upon that information. We get this information on a rolling period. We get sometimes one file a month. Sometimes we get 3 or 4. Usually they come hot and heavy in July, and they come hot and heavy in January. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many personal property accounts we have, but it's I think the amount, and Michelle's back there, she can holler if I'm way off base, like $3 million that we get out of personal property, if my memory's correct. The good thing about personal property is, even though it's voluntarily reported by the commercial entity, if a commercial entity goes to renew their business license in Washington County, and it's found that they have not paid personal property taxes, they do not have their business license renewed. So that's the incentive to pay their personal property tax. And we've had very good luck with that with the county. We work really close with the clerk's office, and we do very well in getting those personal property taxes collected. The third tax, which is the one that has kind of, I think, over many decades been kind of taken for granted, is utility tax. Utility tax is based upon taxes paid by what the state considers public utility companies. In our case, those would be the big two, Verizon of Maryland and Columbia Gas. That makes up 85% of the amount of taxes we collect from this tax. That has always been 2.5 times the real estate property tax, which basically is the same as personal property. For public utilities, the way the state looks at it is you have within those companies, you have operating and non-operating classifications. The utility tax takes into account the operating part of that business, such as right-of-ways, substations, and those are pieces of the commercial the utility that do not get charged real property tax. If they have an office, like a headquarters or something like that, where the utility is not being operated, there's not something being operated out of it, then that goes to SDAT and is charged as a commercial real property. However, when it comes to Verizon and Columbia Gas, being that they're 85% of our proceeds from the utility tax, that is mainly right-of-ways, that's mainly substations, that could be towers, those kind of things. And that is dealt with through a separate entity at the state, the Utilities Division, the Public Utilities Division, Tax Division. They send those assessments up, and we get 20, last fiscal year we got 24, what are called certifications of public utilities. And on that, they have the assessed value that the municipality will charge. We do those as we get those certifications. So that can be done anytime through the year. And that amounts, I put it as part of your packet, an assessed value of about $40 million, revenue of about $942,000, just short of it. As far as the rate goes, I also attached, as part of the packet material, all of the tax rates for the municipalities and the counties in Maryland. The vast majority of municipalities in Maryland stay with the 2.5 times the real property rate. There are a few that go above that, and there are a few that go under that. In the case, Myersville, and Councilman Alshire has said this before, I think Myersville comes out to about 3.1 times the real property rate in Myersville. Annapolis is about 2.8 times the rate. Kristen can address, can maybe provide information on where that increase comes from, or how that's calculated, or what's the basis of that. I got to call into Annapolis to see where they come up with 2.82 times the real property rate. There is nothing, in talking with the downstate, there is nothing, no law that they know of that says you can only go to this times a real property rate and set that for your utility rate. So it doesn't have to be 2.5 times. It can be more than 3.1. It could be 4. It could be 5. Whatever, would be voted on by the elected body.
Scott, I don't understand the chart that you supplied to us, because it,
Which one? Okay, that's from the state website.
because it shows utility tax rates on there that are are they a different form, or?
Nope.
I mean, it would, as I look at it, it looks like we have the highest utility rate in the state.
You gotta be careful though that you're looking in the right column, because
That's-
there's a town special taxing
Right.
district rate and then a county rate.
And I'm looking at the town.
Okay, so you're looking at Allegheny.
Well, let's take a look at Annapolis, okay? That's,
Annapolis is on that first page. 0.738 is their real property rate, 1.94 is their personal property rate, and 1.94 is their utility tax
but
rate.
our utility tax rate is 2.5, right? You're telling me theirs is 3-something.
No.
I'm missing,
The math, you do.
No, their utility tax rate is 1.94 in Annapolis.
right, but you just told us
There's
you used Annapolis, Ocean City,
It's
and
times,
Myersville as a.
that 1.94 is 2.8%, or 2.8 times the
property tax.
.738.
That's not their actual number.
That's not their actual number.
That's
Yeah,
why.
but-
I
Right,
was
ours
getting
is
to-
2.5, our rate at 2.505
So what you're telling
is
me is
2.5
just
times
surely
1.002.
coincidental with 2.5 and 2.505, or when I see 2.5, I assume
No,
that
no,
is
no.
the
That's just
multiplier.
coincidental. That's coincidental,
That's
yeah.
all, that's the reason I was confused.
Right.
When you'll note on that chart, I believe there's 23 municipalities that have a utility tax rate higher than their personal property tax rate. So there isn't, I know your memo, when I read it, almost suggested there's only 3, and there's actually 23.
I think I just gave you 3. If that
Okay.
wasn't the
Yeah,
impression I
so-
meant to say.
Yeah, so there's 23 municipalities in 4 counties that have a rate different than that. And a good example, Brunswick, I mean, their personal property tax is 0, but their utility tax rate is 2.65.
Right.
Which is actually six times their property tax rate.
And that would be railroad, I would
Right.
expect predominantly coming from the railroad. They're probably not getting a whole lot of other personal property.
Yeah, I just don't want folks to get
Yep.
the impression that there's only 1 or 2
Oh,
out
no.
there. I mean,
No,
There's
there
significant
are,
number.
the majority keep it at 2.5 times, There are definitely those out there that, just as there are those that do more, there's those that do less. And they have their own reasons for that.
Well, and I will tell you, most municipalities that I've talked to aren't even aware.
No,
They said it at some point when, 100 years ago,
Yep.
what you did was when telecommunications and Potomac Edison was basically a side business of transportation, they set, a telegraph and poll tax.
Yep.
And as as those went by the wayside and they converted, in the implementation of the utility tax, they said, okay, we'll make it what the personal property tax rate is, or a business real personal property tax rate, and that most municipalities set it at that amount, so they said, okay, we'll set it at that amount, and that's, that's how
And
it
it's
evolved.
and it's easy to do that too,
And then no
because
one
that
ever
was,
asked anything further.
Yeah.
50 years ago.
yep,
So the SSTAT basically does the assessment based, you were saying, on right of way, and
they get an annual report from the
the
utility every year, and that provides them the information as far as what land is included in their property that,
As it applies to the total valuation of that entity.
exactly.
And your percentage of that valuation that exists within your jurisdictional boundary of that total valuation.
Right.
I'm curious how SSTAT's going to deal with that as we approach the 5G cellular, when now we're going to have cell equipment on every light pole and every
Right.
mailbox throughout the
Exactly.
entire city. How are they going to do that kind of assessment?
I asked the guy that I talked to down in Baltimore, and he said that was a very good question, that they were still wrestling with that.
Well, and it even speaks further than that. I mean, let's take the item, North High.
Right.
A prime example where you have entities that won't be their own cell owner, they're gonna be sub-leasees of, because they ran out of public spaces to put them on and
Right.
ran out of the desire to basically build themselves only for that,
Yep.
their singular purpose, and they go through third parties, is an entity like Milestone gonna have to submit to the state like any other publicly regulated entity is?
Right.
And probably, and especially if they're gonna put it as renting parties on non-taxable property,
Right.
like schools, then they're gonna have to sort of try and keep track of those, and then keep track of the utilities that are actually on them.
Right.
And they'll basically have a valuation of zero because they don't own it, they're basically just
And it
renting.
becomes very subjective based upon how the information that the utility will provide to
It's
SDAT,
self-reporting.
how that is accounted for through the annual report. He said that is certainly the biggest challenge they faced in trying to do valuations in the last 25 years. He said because that.
All while wanting their state lawmakers to basically write laws that preclude local
Right.
governments from being able to dictate or determine, or at least have some guidance over where this infrastructure is placed,
Right.
and its application within the community.
Right. So really, the bottom line to it is, and something I know that you've brought up the last couple of years, is that we are not tied to a 2.5 times the real property rate for the utility tax. And it is something that we have the discretion, or you have the discretion, to do with what you feel is right, based upon, as I put the chart in here, 85% is with two utilities. The rest, there are some, probably 95% is with 10 of them. But still, that's just the way, that's the nature of the business of what that monopoly, in our case, deals with.
And for me, it was fairly simple in the outset of this, was for it to be 3 times the rate. Right now, it's a 2.5, so it's a half, it's 1/6.
Right.
Of that $940,000, it comes about $160,000.
Yep.
And the reason that number is important to me, that's about 60% of a penny,
That's right.
is that it takes the $850 roughly that we're getting for this Invest Hagerstown and makes that pot a full $1 million, and allows us to then fully fund that program on an annual basis, which frankly has a return on that investment to those utilities, and the customer base that will benefit from, the reoccupancy, the redevelopment of the properties, that those entities are looking to serve. So,
How long has it been the 2.5%? Like, how long has it been that formula? Forever?
Forever.
So it's never,
When
it's
I say
always-
forever, I'm gonna say, you're going back into probably the 70s or 80s
Oh,
at
my.
best. It's been a long time. It's been a long time.
That's a long time.
And like Councilman Alshire said, people didn't even know really the utility tax was a thing. It was always real and personal. This utility tax was some amorphous, thing over there that,
Communication companies and railroads dealt with it.
Yeah.
well, I think it was,
Don't
like I
get us-
said, I think it was a byproduct of the conversion from utility companies going from being transportation entities to
Right.
being
Communications.
utility providers.
Yep.
And we can be assured that that extra would be going towards the Invest Hagerstown in order to,
That's up
at
to the
least we
elected
can,
body.
well, sure.
I was just trying to create a vehicle to get there.
Right.
What fund does that go to now? The utility?
That dumps into the
general fund.
general fund, right? Right.
Just like the money that's left over this year that we'll get a report on soon, will get dumped back into the general fund reserve instead of going into someplace where it could do some good. But that's up to you guys to make that happen.
And for me, it was fairly simple, when we did our budgetary process and we did the adjustment in the tax rates, we did it sort of as an across-the-board incremental increase, but then created a program that had a return on investment to all of those possibilities, from apartments to houses to small commercial to large commercial. And so this was sort of the only entity that didn't get included in that adjustment increase process, in all the ones that we considered those changes to. But we'll see a benefit, obviously, from that return on investment.
And just to, basically continue to validate what Chris was saying, is that you look at the names of the companies on this list, they're all communications companies, which, again, is going to create the quandary downstate as to when you start putting up these wireless transmitters, how is that going to be evaluated and assessed? Is it going to depend on where they put them? Is it going to depend on if they utilize a third party to place the unit on? Are they going to look to do like what a lot of them do in Wanda Towers? Wanda Towers is a tax exempt parcel, but it evolved to the fact that if you put a cell unit on top of that building, that's used for a commercial entity, that has to be taxed. So you have to take the percentage of what part of that parcel has that cell tower, and you can tax that. That's what they're gonna have issues here with these 5G units or whatever, whatever technology advances to. How do you tax that? How do you value that? How do you assess that? And that's part of what they are gonna struggle with downstate, and that the legislature is gonna struggle with on how is that, because they're gonna get pressure from these utility companies to tax and assess them in the most beneficial way to them as possible. So that's something, and they just don't have the expertise down there because it's such a new technology. They're still trying to struggle to come up to speed on it.
What direction are you looking for, council?
This was purely informational, just to let you know that we do have leeway as far as utility tax goes. That it would be something else for you all to consider when it comes budget time, that we would be able 2.5 times is not a set in stone. We are able to change that. We would just have to, obviously, we wouldn't be able to target, it would have to be it would have to be whatever the rate you all set, I would have to apply to the entire group. We just couldn't look at a couple to assess higher. This would have to go to the entire group that would be classified as public utility. Just as, you know, something else for you all to consider, based upon questions that have been asked in the past.
Okay. Any other questions for Scott?
I just did have one, and I apologize if you did talk about it while I was out, but do you know, will there be any special, you know, public hearing or advertising? You know how like we have to do for our regular rates? Is there anything special there that we have to do?
I asked about that because I was also talking, I had this guy on the phone, so I just kept peppering him with questions.
Good.
We talked about the constant yield notice, and I asked him if this could be part of the constant yield. He didn't know.
Okay, okay.
But he said that was gonna be part of his question to the AG's office, is if there had to be any special compensation or any special communications out.
Advertisements
That,
or-
whether it be through the newspaper or whether it be through a direct letter to the utilities that are on our tax roll.
Okay.
So he said that he would get back to me on that.
Okay,
The
that's
AG
fine.
would get back to me on that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Amendment to City Code, Chapter 173, Peace and Good Order.
Yes.
Kitty,
I know, you don't even need to, they don't even, we appreciate this.
We're a yes.
Yeah, we're all a yes. We're all a yes.
That easy?
It's really gonna be that easy.
Really? Seriously?
Yes.
We don't have to go through this?
I mean, you do for the public, you probably should for the public, but
Put a picture of cute kids in our presentation.
That's good. Good
Just so- yeah.
afternoon. We'll get this started. So I'd like to welcome our guests, Addie Nardi and EJ Fuller. They're from the Boys and Girls Club. Addie is the executive director. EJ is the director of development. And they will be telling you more about this Over the Edge event in a few minutes. We're here today to request two actions from the council. Direction from mayor and council on continuing to work with the Boys and Girls Club on the coordination of their proposed rappelling event, which is currently scheduled for April 19, 2019. And if the mayor and council are in favor of the city continuing to work with Boys and Girls Club, asking for the council to approve an amendment to section 173-5 of the city code at the regular session scheduled for October 23rd. Section 173-5 reads, public exhibitions at dangerous elevations. It shall be unlawful for any person within the corporate limits of the city to be in any manner engaged or concerned in any show or public exhibition by ropes, chains, or apparatus suspended at a dangerous elevation above the ground upon any street, alley, or square, or above a stage or floor if within any building. An amendment to this code as drafted by the city attorney reads, notwithstanding this provision, upon application or upon its own initiative, the mayor and council of the city of Hagerstown may permit any individual or individuals to be engaged or concerned in a show or exhibition by ropes, chains, or apparatus suspended at a dangerous elevation, subject to such restrictions and conditions as the mayor and council may impose. Passage of this amendment would provide the mayor and council with the ability to grant exceptions to this code, subject to certain restrictions and conditions, and it is such an exception that the Boys and Girls Club will need in order to hold their Over the Edge event. The ability to grant exceptions also opens up the possibility for other events to take place in the city which currently violate code. Such events include aerial dance, circus arts, theatrical productions in which actors fly, like Peter Pan, zip lines, rock climbing walls, and ropes courses. Any event requesting an exception would need to meet requirements determined and set forth by the city. So how did we get here? So the Boys and Girls Club approached me within the last, I don't know, many months, it seems, with request to hold this unique fundraising event called Over the Edge. The event essentially boils down to this. People who raise $1,000 for the Boys and Girls Club have the opportunity of a lifetime to rappel down a building under the aegis of a thorough safety protocol. The Over the Edge company has been offering this event since 2008, helping nonprofits in the US and Canada to raise over $80 million. In this month alone, Over the Edge is holding 27 events in 18 states for a variety of similar nonprofit organizations, such as Big Brothers Big Sisters, United Way, Special Olympics, etc. Over the Edge has a thorough safety protocol that includes setting up every Over the Edge site as an industrial work site, adherence to all national and state, local OSHA laws, adherence to SPRAT, which I bet you didn't know before today is the Society of Professional Rope Access Technicians, compliance with state, local workers' compensation coverage, comprehensive site safety and building inspection plan, which at 32 pages you're welcome to read in your spare time, if you understand.
If you understand it, exactly.
$10 million occurrence and aggregate insurance policy, naming key stakeholders as additional insured on our insurance certificate, participant waivers, participant training, and weather monitoring. The Alexander House on Public Square, owned by the NHP Foundation, has agreed to host this event and has already signed a memorandum of understanding with the Boys and Girls Club. NHP Senior Vice President Fred Mitchell attended one of the Over the Edge events in Chicago to gain a fuller understanding of how the event works, and an Over the Edge team has visited the building here and has determined its suitability for this event. The city logistics team, comprising staff from police, fire, public works, engineering, safety, risk management, and DCED, has reviewed Over the Edge's site inspection and safety plan and has reviewed the event with Addie and EJ. The city team has made clear the following requirements. The event requires approval by the mayor and council of an exception to section 1735 of the code. The event must meet all fire and life safety code requirements for an event of this type. The Boys and Girls Club will need to obtain an assembly permit, which will include the requirement to meet any additional safety requirements set forth by the fire department to assure safety of participants and rescuers, should they be needed. At least 2 overtime police officers will be required to be on duty, one on the rooftop and one on the ground, to monitor access to the roof. Closure of the unit block of South Potomac Street for pedestrian observer safety. Over the Edge must submit their liability insurance naming the city as additional insured, and as the certificate holder, participants must sign waivers. Additionally, planning and code will require an evaluation by a Maryland State licensed engineer of the communications equipment platform structure on the Alexander House roof that Over the Edge intends to use as the anchor point, and Over the Edge has dealt with this requirement in other cities, and the Boys and Girls Club is gaining advice from an engineer who serves on its board of directors. So that's the background. At this point, I'm gonna hand it over. I think EJ, you got the PowerPoint button?
I sure do.
Okay, and EJ and Addie, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I also want to introduce, we have 2 board members in the room with us, our board treasurer, Terry Shoemaker-Crite, and our board member, Craig Campbell. I don't know where they went, but Terry's in a booth, so I'm guessing not far. Really quickly, first of all, I want to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to come and speak with you, and I want to just remind you really quick what we do. We serve currently 500, this year so far we've served 500 city children at our 4 clubs, Pennsylvania Avenue, Noland Village, Elgin Station Community Center, and Frederick Manor. You are more than welcome to visit us, and I would love it if you would visit us at any one of those clubs. We're proud of what we do, and we like to show off the good work that's being done and the cute kids. Just so you know about, we've reached about 800 other youth in the city through outreach, such as backpack giveaways and basketball. That's the big draw for the older boys to our club, is that all 4 of our clubs have a basketball gym. We are currently about 60% boys, 40% girls, and over 80% of our kids are free and reduced meal. So we serve a very important purpose, not only to provide them a place to come after school, but also we feed them, we do programs, we give them a space to let out their energy, do their homework, and most importantly, we provide a safe place for them to come to. We are focusing on our teens right now because we saw a need among our teen population and figured it was probably the same among the city. And we've instituted some teen-specific programs such as Street Smarts, which is an anti-bullying gang prevention program, and we've worked with other initiatives in the community to try and just do better for our teens. About 13% of our fundraising budget comes from events. That's our annual steak and burger dinner, 2 golf tournaments, both of which I hope to fold into one next year, and various other events that are held for us. This event could be a potential game changer for us. As you know, there are a lot of nonprofits in this community doing a lot of good work, and we all need dollars to function. An event like this is something that no one else is doing. Do you want to go ahead and advance? We were approached by Over the Edge, and their numbers speak for themselves. The most important number that's not on there, though, is that they have, in all of their events, they have had to call an ambulance once for a bee sting, which EJ will talk about a little bit later. Once they approached us, we vetted them thoroughly. We not only talked to other Boys and Girls Clubs that did Over the Edge events, but we also talked to other nonprofits in similarly sized communities. Every single person we talked to said that they would do it again. They would host it again. They'd tweak a few things, but by and large, it was a good quality event that brought in a lot of money and recognition to the agency. We are a Hagerstown organization. We're in the city. We wanted to be in the city for this event. For us, coming downtown was a natural selection because it gave us the chance to partner with the city, not only partner with the city, but also show our support for the community. Go ahead. I'll turn it over to EJ now.
Well, our project goals for this Over the Edge event it's a peer-to-peer fundraising event, and it's going to raise general operation dollars for our club. The potential for the club is to raise nearly $70,000 to $100,000, and $100,000 would be the perfect world where we get 92 people to rappel down the building at Alexander House as well. Kitty did touch on a lot of these things, so I'll kind of won't go entirely through them, but Over the Edge is a specialized event company that provides signature events for nonprofits around the world. The business leaders, individuals, and community members are invited to raise donations in exchange for the experience of going over the edge and they help to raise dollars for us. This unique event generates front page news, raises thousands of dollars, and provides participants with a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We tell people that this is something that they can check off your bucket list. And Over the Edge is responsible for all technical aspects of the event, including the insurance, professional staff, and rappelling equipment. This signature event consistently raises six figures in revenue, and it grabs front page headlines and provides an exciting experience for nonprofits to give to their donors. The big thing that everyone always asks about is how safe is the event. Every Over the Edge event is set up as an industrial work site. So as a result, it's compliant with the federal and state OSHA fall protection standards and OSHA federal and state laws. All the Over the Edge staff is trained and they're SPRAT certified. Each event site has a comprehensive site inspection and safety plan that is completed that you guys received. It's 35 pages.
I can get it to you, I didn't actually.
Okay, if you want it, we can get it to you. It's hard to understand unless you understand. It's 35 pages. It's great.
Make Lou read it.
Well, and if every risk is not mitigated, then they will recommend not using that building or not doing the event at all. Because they have a lot at stake as well. They do these events, like Kitty said, they're doing 27 events just this month. So they have a lot at stake. The weather policy for OTE is if there's any lightning, we do a lightning delay, similar to like a football game, a basketball, or a baseball game. If there's lightning, we'll do a delay, and then we'll commence after the lightning has passed. Heavy rain, typically an event can continue to operate in the rain, but if it's heavy rain, they will do a rain delay, similar to a football or baseball game. The wind, oops, I think I turned it off.
I think you broke it.
There we go. The wind is probably one of the biggest things. It can cause the ropes to sway, which will hinder the repellers. If there's a wind that's over 25 miles per hour, they tend to want to delay. So we'll delay the event for wind. Heat as well can be very dangerous to people working outside. We're expecting to do this event in April 6th, so we're hoping that it won't be super hot and we won't have to even worry about the heat at that point. We are going to as a club, we're gonna use all the resources that we can throughout the community to help out with this event. So we have community volunteers that are gonna help. We have peer-to-peer fundraising through community leaders. And all the equipment is all gonna be provided by Over the Edge. Alexander House has accepted the MOU. And we have community support and our committee of community leaders as well.
You can skip the media day schedule if you just want to go right to a high level of the day of. Do you want me to work the clicker?
Yeah, there's like 3 more.
We're not sure if we're gonna have a media day, which
Yeah,
is
we're not
why
sure
it's in here,
100%.
but really unless the media wants to do it.
If we could,
That's right, you do.
if we can get, if
It's a
we can
bucket
get
list
West
for
to
them
repel,
too.
we might be able to get West to repel, you know. So on the event day of the schedule, like Kitty said before, we're gonna ask that we block off the street, Potomac Street, and that's pretty much all we'll need as far as blocking what street we'll need blocked. The day will commence at 6:30. We'll have our meetings. We'll start with our registration up until at 9 o'clock. We'll start registering people to rappel for the 9 to 9:30 rappels. And then we'll go all the way up until 5 o'clock that evening. And then once we get to 5 o'clock, they'll go ahead and clean up. So that's pretty much the event and how it will go down.
So we have people lined up who want to serve on this committee. We have companies lined up who want to sponsor this event. This is a significant investment for us. Believe it or not, they actually don't do it for free. And so that being the case, we're working really hard to make sure we're giving ourselves enough time to plan and execute this event properly. We want it to be a win for us because several of our board members and our staff members really believed in this event and kind of went out on a limb for the event, so to speak. And so we want to make sure we're doing it correctly. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll certainly entertain any questions that you might have about the event.
Just wanted to make sure, I think part of this is that the first person over the edge is the mayor, is that correct?
Yes. 100.
We'll write that into the-
I can do that, that's not a problem.
And we don't have to change your law for America, so you won't need a rope.
Well, we are doing something, one of the campaigns within this
I want to see Jay write an
event
article about how mean.
is toss the boss. So
Toss the ball.
there he
Oh,
is.
yes.
So go over
Toss the balls.
the fundraising methodology again is, the $1,000 is a team?
So it's peer-to-peer fundraising, so much like if you were to do the Polar Bear Plunge for the Humane Society or do a 5K, you would go out and raise money or write a check yourself, raise it or write it. We're also looking for sponsors to offset some of the costs, obviously the initial investment to do it, and then the, just other costs, like we're gonna set up some, I think we had talked about bringing in food trucks and things like that. So those would be our hard expenses that we would look to cover with sponsorship, but everything else would just be through peer-to-peer fundraising. It does not, everyone that we've talked to, again, we vetted it pretty thoroughly, the 1,000 seemed to be reasonable, so.
Okay. And the $10 million insurance, I did see in there that the city's named as an additional insured. That covers the participants and any damage to the building, any. pretty
It
much
does, yes.
Yes.
Conference. Anybody historically know what was the reason for the prohibition of,
I think it was probably tight wire acts
That's what I would
in the
think.
1800s,
like
Tightrope
this
things.
circus acts and trapeze and all that kind of stuff?
but downtown, yeah,
Downtown.
when they were from building to building.
Oh,
Houdini.
yeah, Houdini.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking,
Bridge,
Houdini wannabe,
Blue Water,
Yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
crazy.
mean, I'm in support of this and the Boys and Girls Club. I thank you for everything that you do. I mean, it doesn't go unnoticed that EJ Fuller was a club kid and now he's sitting here presenting to us. So I think that the program works and everything that you do, I mean, I think it's fantastic. I will not be rappelling off of that thing. Oh, no. Yeah, she, all day. Heck no. So,
Thank you.
Kristen will.
Anybody else?
Thank you all very
I
much.
think I would just like to just reiterate the importance of timing on this, because we're sort of trying to fast track it, I'll admit, right? So if it's amenable to mayor and council to move forward with this event, we would like to put the amendment on the October 23rd session. So it'll be introduced next week in the preliminary review, agenda review.
That's fine.
Go with that. And I know that Addie would really like assurance that there's a relative certainty that the Boys and Girls Club will be granted this exception, so that she can.
It's already done.
Yeah, that was before you sat down.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I just want to check because
Wonderful.
I know she needs to start planning, and I know it won't technically
slapping
be
her a little.
rubber stamped until December, and that's a long time when you're trying to raise $70,000 to wait.
So
Yeah,
that
you're
gives
good
us
to
the
go on
opportunity.
area.
Yeah,
What's that?
You're good to go on area.
you'll be
All right.
fine.
Thank you guys
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful night.
All right, well done. I'm still on.
Next up is the recommended 2018 event programming and outline for 2020 signature events.
Switch gears here. All right. Hi again. So Jill and I are here today to present recommendations for 2019 event programming that will serve as the transition to a new music and arts signature event that will debut in 2020, coinciding with the completion of the UIP project. Expenses for this 2019 programming will be paid for from FY19 events line items. During the July 17 work session, you directed us to work towards the production of this new signature music, arts, and culture event to debut in 2020 and to present modified programming in 2019, which is why we are here today. In August, we convened 2 brainstorming sessions with local stakeholders to discuss potential programming. Invitations were extended to the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, arts and cultural organizations, arts educators, city and county staff, Main Street Hagerstown representatives, members of the faith community, and community centers. Some of the positive ideas that came forward were celebrating what is great here, improving the quality of life in the city to attract people to come here, and acknowledging Hagerstown's diversity. Those convened also agreed that new programming should take place in multiple locations, represent different art forms and different styles and genres, include local and non-local talent, be a mix of free and ticketed, feature an anchor or headliner event or events while also having less formal or less produced performances, be inclusive of cultural diversity, and be walkable. With this information in mind, we have sketched 2 options for 2019 programming, both of which are potential templates upon which to build a larger 2020 event. With either option, committees comprising stakeholders and arts and culture experts will help to identify and secure talent. We believe that, especially with option A, organizers will come forward with complementary activities that can be co-marketed under the umbrella of an inclusive arts and culture event in the city. So to review the 2 options, we'll start with option A, which is, would be 4 consecutive weekends in June 2019. So it would be 4 weekends, Fridays and Saturdays, and Sundays if programming is already organized by one of these complementary organizations. All programming would take place in FY19. Programming is primarily free and open to the public. Core programming would be planned by the city. Complementary programming being organized by others would be marketed under an umbrella of a larger month-long happening. We would have 1 headliner at the Maryland Theater. This would be a more concentrated and immersive experience, a whole month of activities, and we could theme it sort of around the month of June. I don't know, some jumping in June, or some kind of durational thing like 10 days, 38 happenings, 1 amazing place. The draft schedule would be Fridays, June 7, 14, 21, and 28, using the University Plaza, putting bands in there, different genres of bands every weekend. Saturdays, June 8, 15, 22, 29, from 12 to 6 p.m., a variety of art, culture, and music events along the cultural trail. And by that I mean it could be a mix of music, poetry, visual artists, storytellers, book readings, dancers, circus artists, plus food and artisan vendors. And then putting a headliner at the Maryland Theater on either Saturday, June 1st or Saturday, June 15th. I've asked Jessica to hold those dates open for us until we can determine which direction we're headed. Complementary events that are likely, although not set in stone, but likely to take place in June 2019 include the Tour of Washington County Bike Race, the Main Street Chalk Art Festival, the Washington County Free Library Longest Table Event, Shakespeare in the Park, concert at the Washington County Museum of Fine Arts, the USA Cycling Downtown Bike Race and the Downtown Block Party, a Wind Down event, and Thunder in the Square. Option B would be 6 non-consecutive weekends over 6 months, so May to October. This would follow more of a format that looks like a first Friday, Saturday kind of event. Programming would span 2 fiscal years, FY19 and 20. Again, the programming would be free and open to the public primarily. Again, core programming planned by the city. There would probably be fewer opportunities to work with complementary activities since there's no guarantee that activities would be happening the same weekends that we would be identifying as our weekends. There could still be a headliner at the Maryland Theater, but would probably seem less tied to the overall event because it would just sort of pick a date. It would be a less immersive experience, and the theme would really just be around this first Friday, first Saturday idea. The workload is spread out for the staff, but it also coincides with other events that the staff is coordinating. The dates would be Fridays, May 3rd, June 7, July 5, August 2nd, September 6th, October 4th, again with bands at the University Plaza, different genres. Saturdays, May 4, June 8, July 6, August 3rd, September 7th, October 5th, again, arts, culture, and music events along the cultural trail in the afternoon, and a date to be determined at the Maryland Theater. Once we receive direction, our next steps will be to plan and implement the 2019 programming while also simultaneously working towards the expansion of 2020 programming. We will secure commitments from people who will work with us in committees to identify and secure the talent. We would seek out these complementary activities that would be umbrellaed and co-marketed with an event. We would develop a comprehensive marketing plan to get the word out about this new programming. For 2020, staff will continue conversations with stakeholders and jump off ideas that were generated in August. These ideas include multiple events happening simultaneously, use of additional venues besides the Maryland Theater, Cultural Trail, and the Plaza, such as the Municipal Stadium, the Herald Mail Press Room, the Farmers Market, the library, the BISFA Black Box Theater, vacant downtown buildings, City Park, the museum, courtyard, and auditorium, restaurants, ballrooms, churches. Continue to follow through on this idea, this interest in the idea of new ideas, new architecture. A term that kind of floated in one of our brainstorming sessions was new hub city. Interest in the idea of progressive, meaning both new and traveling. Brainstormers saw multiple events being staged along this necklace of venues, if you will, from City Park and the museum at one end, and with the completion of the Cultural Trail, the Farmers Market at the other end, and with everything in between. Inclusion of a dedicated art and craft show similar to the Frederick Festival of the Arts, an increased emphasis on local food, wine, and craft beer, and an encouragement of collaborations between artists and arts organizations. So we welcome discussion, questions, and direction.
So, I'm gathering that staff's recommendation or staff's preference is option A.
I can speak for myself. It's probably that'd be my preference, I think.
Would be mine.
And it also sounds like option A kind of coincides or like gives you a nice introduction to your 2020, to the 2020 event, more than option B.
Well, it integrates with other things like
Yeah.
Tour of Washington County and a lot of other things going on already.
Yeah. I think it's strong for two reasons. I think because it gained traction, because it's so
Yeah.
much happening kind of simultaneously, kind of do this.
And option B is, it's the same thing over and over and over and over again. I mean, it's different bands, but it's basically
It just has more of a wind down feel to me.
yeah,
Agreed.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
is option A only an option for 2019? Or is it like a preferred option of how you would do this on an annual basis?
I think we're thinking, at least the way that I was kind of pulling it together in my brain after talking to these different stakeholders, was that that would sort of be a template, sort of the simple template for something that could be expanded upon in 2020. Because something that the brainstormers kept saying was, we want multiple things happening at once. So there's a band happening here, but simultaneously there's also something happening here. So that there's more of that
Festival
festival,
feel.
really a festive feeling.
And more of a format, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a 2020 event would take place in the month of June. We would have flexibility to take this format, once we try it in 19, repeat it in June of 2020, or potentially repeat it at a different timing in 2020.
And part of which may be dependent upon if, maybe Jessica will come back in a year and tell us that everything's still on track with her construction, but we don't, we don't actually know.
Yeah. One of-
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kristen.
One of the things that may be very difficult to do, but I would hope we can do, is one of my pet peeves has always been, there are some weekends, there are so many competing things going on, you couldn't possibly attend them all. There's a festival going on in Smithsburg, there's something up in Chambersburg, there's something down in Frederick, and then 2 weekends later, there's nothing. It's dead. And if there's any way that we can look at the schedule, keeping in mind or taking into account some of the things going on in Berkeley Springs and Chambersburg, Frederick, and other places to schedule our big events, the big draws, to where we're bringing the most people in, or we're on a weekend that's not the dead weekend, but we're not competing with all these other events.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that in June is graduation, and school is out, and lots of vacations. So that's some of the things that we ran into with, other festivals or other events that I planned in June. So it's a tricky month.
Can we do
July?
It's hot.
Yeah,
It's just really hot there.
Well, December's cold.
Yeah.
I look at all this stuff in a
Yeah.
single month, and like I said, I'm not, you guys can pick what you want, but, I'm just thinking to myself that, given between the last 2 weeks of school and, and I guess all of that sort of kid-related obligation, June is
Yeah,
difficult.
June's tough.
Well, what would be
It is.
the problem with stretching it over the summer? I mean,
Well, then you're in option B.
well, are we? I mean, option B just seemed to be more,
Regimented.
more regimented, yeah. It's, when I look at the draft option B schedule, this, option A seems to tie many different types of events together rather than the same thing repeated weekend after weekend after weekend. I don't know. We have things going on here all through the summer in town.
And I think we downsize any month. I agree. July's hot. You've got a lot of people going on vacation in July. You got a lot of people going on vacation in June. August,
And in August.
is dog days of August, so you're on vacation.
So, maybe the bigger question for me then is, what's the other stuff? In other words, if you got all this stuff that you sort of coordinated for June, does that mean that you have decreased the amount of downtown-oriented activities and events in those other summer months?
You're still gonna have wind downs and stuff, though.
And how are you?
That wouldn't change.
Well, I mean,
I'm just
USA Cycling
curious.
already moved to June, so they took themselves out of July, maybe because of the heat, I don't know, right? Not that it could necessarily be cooler on June 23rd, but I thought about May, and then May you hit graduations too, and you hit stuff already planned in University Plaza, so we're gonna hit, like USMH has stuff going on in there. in
Yeah, I
May.
guess that's my curiosity. I'm trying to look at this option A and option B.
Yep.
And I'm trying to frame in my mind the piece that's missing here of what's programmed in July, August, and frankly, September. You know what I mean? That says to me, yes, we're still gonna have enough in those other months to make it attractive enough for me to say option A is good to cram into June. I guess that's the part I'm missing that I would like to see is what other things are gonna happen downtown in July, August, and September that give me,
She wants
I
to see a
guess-
more comprehensive calendar of events to
And if
figure out where.
The bike race and the block party and all that stuff has already moved to June, there's already gonna be things going on, so why not July? We could replace that lost activity with this in July.
Well, the only thing I would point out is, with some of these things, you build upon them. I mean, so you have a bike race that attracts X amount of people, but you have these other events that attract a whole bunch of other people too. And I think you may find that 2 + 2 is 6 under that situation versus getting X amount of people out for this and that. And also in the bike race, you got one more year to introduce all these out-of-towners to,
And they're gone.
to something really going on. And the Bicycle Advisory Committee, one thing we're told with a lot of these bike races, that's what happens. They become a festival, that biking is part of it. But
Yeah, I'm not opposed to A. All I'm saying is, I'm interested in seeing the lineup for those other 3 months that we're sort of, you know,
well, we know we got August-Toberfest.
Right, I mean,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
can
I
probably
don't
tell you, it's
know.
like,
I'd
I
just
can
be
tell you in
interested in
July,
seeing.
there's gonna be the Hagerstown Hopes Pride Day, which is, like, if the 13th is a Saturday, it's that day, it's that weekend. We have August-Toberfest, we have Summer Slide, I'm assuming they'll do that again. And then, assuming Wind Down goes forward. That's kind of what happened this year.
Well, and, I mean, people aren't gonna go on vacation for an entire month in June, so even if they miss, I mean, they're not gonna, if they miss the first weekend, they could come to the second, third, or fourth, you know, especially if the momentum keeps building and it's awesome and people want to attend and they hear about it, so then by week 4, it's the greatest event that the city's ever seen, you know?
And I will
don't
say
know.
that the people that came to these brainstorming meetings, they were sort of, they kept saying June. And they kept saying later in June, right? Because they were like, the first weekend in June, we've heard this from Blues Fest people, that was a big graduation weekend. People were out of town, they wouldn't come to the event, whatever. And then I remember, Austin, you actually said, if you're gone one weekend, then you miss the whole event. So to me, having something that was multiple weekends, but in a close amount of time and umbrellaed under one event, essentially, if you missed one day, you'd still have 7 other days to catch something. And I do, my gut instinct is that being able to tie in with other events that are already happening that have an arts culture tie-in makes so much sense, because then we're also helping to market each other, right? The city already supports Shakespeare in the Park, so why not help? Because they came to the brainstorming session, they were like, well, we're nervous that you're gonna cease funding us because you're gonna do your own event now. And I'm like, no, it makes more sense to like
Work together.
marry us, right?
Yeah.
And like yes, we support you and you produce your own thing and you've got this awesome thing at University Plaza, and then we complement with additional programming to make it a really rich month. This way I'm looking at it. I mean, I don't think another month is not, I mean, I think another month is certainly possible. I will say that doing outdoor things every weekend in July could be brutal, because it can be really hot, and musicians may not want to stand out on the Cultural Plaza strumming their guitars
It
or
becomes a
reading
safety
poetry.
thing.
And
There's
that,
a little more safety issues.
we'll need lots of tents and trees.
Yeah,
All right, I'm cool with A then.
I like A.
I like that.
All right, there you go.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
Good job, Kim.
Step eligible business categories for rental.
So we're back in follow-up to our discussion in September about the Partners in Economic Progress Program. And before we get into a discussion about the categories of businesses underneath that program, I wanted to give you an overview of two of the programs, the PEP program and our retail and restaurant. So it's page 3 in the packet is a side-by-side comparison of the two programs. And essentially, these are two different tools in our toolkit with some key differences. So both the eligibility requirements and the guidelines for each of the programs help us in prioritizing that even given strong funding for each of the programs, we still do not have unlimited funding. So having the differences relates to the prioritization related to the not unlimited funding. So some key differences is the PEP program was originally developed to with the rationale of upper floors and to help a developer once they've done the full building renovation, including updating all of the core systems with minimum investments of $250 for commercial, $200 for mixed use, and $100 for residential. And we had the rationale of the upper floors because that is the harder part of buildings to lease, and it provides rent relief for a 2-year or a 3-year period, depending on the configuration. If you look over at the retail and restaurant program, this is a tool specifically for the first floor retail space, and it originated out of our pop-up to permanent during the pop-up shops as a tool to use for retail attraction as well as to get pop-up shops to go permanent, and looking at grants for renovation of the tenant fit out being 75% of the grant and some portion of that for working capital. And the amount of the grant in each of these under the PEP program, we have a grant amount of up to $24,000 over either 2 or 3 years. Smaller grants for the retail of either 2, 3, or 4,000. So another key difference is the PEP program is limited to specific buildings that have gone through the renovation. The retail and restaurant is open to any retail building in the PEP zone and specific for retail. The PEP program provides the higher level with a 4-year commitment on the part of the business. So I think in those situations, we're looking at more stable businesses and slightly less risk. With the retail and restaurant program, it's a tool that only requires a 1-year commitment on the part of the business and can have a higher risk, but it also has a lower amount for the grant. Looking at our budgets in each of the programs that we, in the side-by-side comparison, we have $131,500 in fiscal year 19 for the PEP program. And with the commitments to date, as well as that this budget also supports the grant equal to taxes, which is another benefit of the PEP program, that we would have $40,000 remaining in this for the rest of this fiscal year, which we estimate would support approximately 11 to 13 businesses for the balance of this fiscal year. And over in the retail and restaurant program, we had $62,000 total in the budget. This was also grant supported with Community Legacy at $50,000 and $12,000 from a line item in the general fund. We've spent $13,000. With the remaining $49,000, we estimate that we could support approximately 12 retailers coming in through that program. And I wanted just to give that background as we talk about the various categories. Also included in the packet is a map. So the blue line
is the designated area of downtown for both the retail and restaurant as well as the PEP program, and is also our Main Street area. So I'm gonna turn it over to Danelle to walk through.
I want to point out one thing that,
Sure.
just for our viewers who always complain that, you know, we're inundated with all these negative businesses, but the ineligible businesses in the PEP program and the retail and restaurant are bail bondsmen, churches, hookah lounges, tattoo stores, adult bookstores, and gambling and the like. So, just so you know, we aren't out there promoting those types of businesses through these programs.
Right.
Go ahead.
I'll point out one additional thing. Page 5 helps to understand under the PEP program, the current guidelines say that a first floor that is non-storefront commercial space can be incentivized. So the first two pictures show you examples that a PEP building with that type of non-storefront configuration, we would consider applicants for the first floor when the building does not have a traditional storefront configuration. And the examples below show PEP buildings with storefront, so that first floor space under our current guidelines would not be eligible. It would only be the upper floors.
Is there a reason why we don't just do all city center instead of using the Main Street designation?
It goes back to the origination of the program. So the program, I think, is in its 10th year. It started with $125,000 in funding in its first year. And by narrowing it to a smaller prioritized area, it was a way of helping to balance the need against the budget. But it certainly can be opened wider if you desire.
I would
I
like
would
to
like
see
that.
that.
Yep, same.
Oh, why?
I mean, I would be okay with this whole city center. It's only, what, 2 blocks either direction?
Would that be helpful? I mean, do you have investors that are looking in this area out here that would really love to use the program?
You know, we welcome awarding grant money. It's something Danelle and I really enjoy doing.
I would too.
I think the issue is sometimes, and we had 1 year where we got into a wait list situation with the PEP program, where the amount in the budget didn't meet the demand. So, so if we widen it, will we be creating more demand than we have budget? We can give it a try, and cross
Let me
that
ask a
bridge
question
when we
I
get
think
to
that's
it.
a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, the PEP program, it looks like it, well, I know that there are businesses that have benefited from the PEP program that aren't within the blue line.
We made one
Right.
exception,
Thank you.
right, correct.
So exceptions can
Which is
be
where,
made, although you'd rather not make exceptions, you would rather
The
amend.
Mulberry Lofts building was an exception.
yeah, I guess when I look at this and you say I want to make it bigger, like I tried to think in my mind of this yellow outlined area, which is the A&E, and then you have the green, and then you have the blue line. I try and visualize in my mind what's actually in those blocks.
Mhm.
And for me, when you say make it bigger, like I can say, yeah, let's go, a block or 2 towards Mulberry. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to go a block down from that towards Baltimore because a lot of that is residential. You know what I'm saying?
But that's not in the green.
I know, that's what I'm saying. If you want, but when you say go a block or 2, I'm thinking which direction, because up and down gets to be residential.
I'm sorry, I was just saying, that's all there is. I mean, I would be fine with this whole green area. I was just saying that it's about a block or 2, that's 2 blocks. 2 blocks
But
this
it's-
way.
And what I'm
I
saying is,
didn't
I'm
mean
good east and
literally,
west, but I think north and south, you run into residential blocks much more quickly.
Okay, well, they won't apply. I just thought it'd be easy to say the whole green area that is considered city center be PEP eligible, instead of mapping out a new imaginary boundary.
And not into the arts and entertainment district where it's not in the green? I mean, this is in that yellow line, isn't that the,
Well, the yellow
we
line's
just-
outside of the green.
I know, so
To the north.
Right.
is
You- I
that
mean,
not
you-
where
you-
you would like it? You aren't thinking?
No, what I was saying is if you're going to expand it from the blue, that I'm thinking in my mind of where commercial actually exists, and to me, it definitely exists east and west, but I don't think it exists much outside of the blue area, north and
So
south.
maybe
I think it
taking it
exists
just
at
east and
least
west.
midway, if not the
It'd be
entire
nice if they were doing all the
200
same
block of
thing.
South Potomac Street.
That'd be
There's a
great.
lot of
Like,
commercial in there.
if we didn't have 4 different lines.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
would
I was
really
trying
like
not
that.
to create another one. I was just
Yeah,
like,
let's not create
if
another
it's
one.
city
Yeah, we'll do.
center, it's potential. I just think that would be the easiest way to do it, instead of creating yet another.
Or just pulling it east and west, you know, pulling this blue line out. Both ways.
I would recommend, if you want to expand it, to go from the blue line to the CCMU. Makes sense to me, because then it stays within your, city center mixed-use zoning district,
The green.
the green.
Why is the yellow line so wildly different on the east side?
That goes back to the history of the formation of the A&E district. I'd have to circle back with you on that. I believe because the A&E district offers some benefits for artists who live in a district and make artistic work, so you could have live-work spaces. There may have been some thinking behind some residential areas that would be areas where artists would live.
Loft.
Right.
And we wanted to incorporate the almshouse. Yeah, it is. It actually is. We wanted to incorporate the almshouse in that area.
I would
Well,
like
I
to see
think
it
the-
expanded.
The easiest way to do it would be to say the green
Yeah.
is the area.
Yeah, I'm good for that with starters.
And then we're not
Yes.
drawing more lines on more maps to figure out what they are.
Yep.
Okay, so we got that item. We want to walk through the categories, so I'm going to let Danelle lead us through that portion.
Good evening. So after the last,
Sorry, we're still going over the lines.
it's okay. So the last time we met, we discussed these categories, and we took your recommendations back to the review committee, and we really appreciated your feedback and comments on what your thoughts were on what maybe to consider into the program. So if you look on page 6, we kind of reorganized the categories based on, the first section is, we would recommend adding these categories to the list of eligible businesses. The second section at the bottom of page 6 is possible business categories to consider, and this is where we would like your input and recommendation as to whether or not to include these into the program. Page 7 is not recommended. The reasoning, the majority of these are residential. But we could definitely go through them. And then page 8 has the current eligible categories that are accepted. And then there's that little key, sorry, as to what the, if it's a permitted principal use, principal use in accordance with the parking requirements, or permitted use in the CCMU district, because that's what we're looking at, and then SE is special exception. So,
One of the possible business categories to consider, and it looks like you have, it has P as permitted. you have tattoo parlors and massage parlors, and steam baths and saunas.
They're just not eligible for the money.
I'm sorry?
They're just not eligible for the money.
The P means that type of business is permitted
In the
in,
zone.
in that zone.
Right, from the
Not in
land
the PEP
management
program.
code.
They just can't apply for PEP.
Right.
Well, that's what we're considering adding, to
Yeah,
allow them
well,
to
that's
apply for PEP.
possible. Possible. Can I just
fine
ask
with
a question? That maybe for further discussion down the line, but I'm curious to how massage parlors are defined anymore in our codes. Because there was a time when we used to have what I would consider massage parlors. Now that massage in Maryland is all legitimate, I mean, I don't think you can, there is any such thing as what we would refer to as the geisha house that used to exist. I don't know of any massage that's allowed at all that isn't done by legitimate massage, licensed massage people.
It's regulated.
And,
Can't you get a massage up at Potomac Day Spa?
but that's gonna be by somebody who's a licensed massage therapist.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I say, I don't know what a massage parlor is right now. That's all I'm asking, I don't expect an answer right now.
Yeah, and we
But-
can circle with Kathy to help.
Yeah, I'm
or
curious,
Steve
and
Bucknell.
I'm not expecting an answer now, but it just hit me.
I think what's interesting of that particular category from the land management code is that if you think of steam baths and saunas, a downtown business like
Float.
the
Right.
float spa would be in this category. A tattoo parlor would be in this category. So, something to consider, and that's why I think our review committee discussed it a bit and put it into this as to whether we look at this category as a whole or exclude it.
Does Float, do they consider themselves a massage? I mean, it's not quite what they do, right? I mean,
Who's that?
Float. Regenerate.
they offer massage.
It's like an it's like a chair.
Chair.
It's a chair massage.
So it's not a hands-on massage.
No, it's not a therapist, it's
No,
a
that's how
chair.
Body Works. But see, do you consider Body Works a quote massage parlor? I don't know how it would be
Yeah.
defined.
It's more like a spa.
Did you get a
I would
massage?
consider that a
Well,
spa.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I don't think there are any more quote massage parlors in existence.
So I just said that we
We're gonna
didn't
refer
allow
to
these
some.
tattoo parlors and things in the PEP program, and now we're considering putting them in the PEP?
No, we're not, that's to be considered by us, I don't think that we're going to
Possible
do it.
business categories.
And
Bail
by the way,
bonds, churches,
ju- ju-
hookah,
Yeah, we're looking
tattoo.
for- yeah,
Just
we're
for the
looking-
record, the good news is, depending on who you are, the reason you don't see bondsmen many in town is because essentially the bail bonds business is disappearing in the state of Maryland, but is ultimately being completely dismantled in Washington County. There's almost no bail bond business anymore.
I'm just curious why, like, what's bad about tattoo places?
Nothing.
I didn't say there was.
I'm just, yeah,
Yeah, I didn't say there was either. No,
But
what
when
I'm
you have
saying
it-
is
but-
that
but
when
it's
you
in there
have
with bail
people.
bondsmen, massage parlors, tattoos,
well, I
you
mean,
know.
they generate a significant amount of income.
I was-
They definitely generate a regular retail customer base.
No, I don't disagree.
And they're
with
definitely
you.
much more regulated than, than
And that's how,
40 years ago.
that fits right in with the massage issue that I bring up.
I think a lot of
The
this.
majority of people at this table have a tattoo, okay? I'm not saying tattoo parlors are bad. What I'm saying is that people complain to me about the type of businesses that whenever someone's on a rampage to me sometimes in a grocery store or something, it's, what about the hookah lounge? Even though there's not a hookah lounge in downtown anymore. It doesn't matter. That comes up every single time.
Which is funny, because everyone wants us to be like Frederick, and Frederick has hookah lounges and
Well,
tattoo
They
parlors.
want us to be
but,
like Frederick
you
until
know.
we are like Frederick, and they don't want us to be like Frederick.
And there
That's
is,
the way it works.
for the retail and restaurant, because we're receiving state grant money to support that, there is specific language from the state that I believe we lift there in place in there in terms of ineligible businesses. So tattoo may be something prohibited by the state because of grant money.
Now, are these applied to PEP and to the restaurant program?
No, just to PEP,
Just to PEP?
right.
Okay.
For me, it's real simple. Under this list of possible business categories to consider, if they are not state prohibited, I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with the recommended and the possible, all of them.
And nothing jumps out at me.
Very,
Cool.
So add them on? And you're okay with the not recommended?
Yes.
Okay. The non-storefront commercial space, you want to leave that as the guidelines state while we're here. Just wanted to clarify that for the two photos on the lower portion of page 5, we would continue not to incentivize retail configured first floor space in PEP buildings unless you directed us to make a change. I would recommend likely keeping that guideline.
But we have incentives through
We have
our
other-
Best Hagerstown.
Exactly.
Right.
Others,
Okay.
other incentives.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yep.
Other ways to address that.
Yeah, I'm good with
Right.
Okay.
Good. Very
that.
good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I don't know,
You have another question?
they're not numbered.
There's other incentives
No.
for them, though.
Yeah, I just feel like we have a lot of vacant storefronts right now, so if we can offer something to help fill them,
I think we are offering things that are fun.
well, if we
Is
can
it-
offer more.
Is it a
They would be
similar
eligible.
program to PEP? I mean, that what we can offer them?
The
Or is
retail,
PEP much
yeah.
more?
The retail and restaurant incentive program that Jill spoke about, which is either a $2,000, $3,000, or $4,000 grant per space.
Yeah.
That's one incentive, and then we also have the Invest Hagerstown Citywide Redevelopment Grant Program. That's anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 a grant based on a 2-to-1 match. That could, anyone could apply for.
So the developer, let's say you have a building that's got the possibility of retail on the first floor. Then a developer who wants to develop that building can apply to the Invest Hagerstown program and receive upwards of $25,000, correct?
Yes.
If two-thirds of, or a third
Right.
of whatever their rehab cost is, up to $25,000.
Yes.
All right, and then the retail that wants to go in there can actually be part of the PEP program through another incentive that,
They can apply for the retail and restaurant and receive up to
Right.
$4,000.
And I'm
but
not-
the developer's already received a grant,
Right.
right?
But that doesn't help bring a business into it. And that helps redevelop, but that doesn't necessarily help bring a business into it. And not, I mean, any amount of money is a good amount of money, but $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 doesn't cover a sign.
A recommendation here might be to increase the grant amount from the highest of 4 to something like 6 or 8.
So it doesn't
So
cover the
that-
cost of sign. We have a sign and facade grant program.
Do you
I was
have-
using that as an example.
Oh, okay, well, you said it, that's why I was.
Do you have a number of these that are beating down the door? I mean, I feel like, I understand what you're saying, but you can always come back in, because I don't feel like anybody really is clamoring for this
No, that's
this
just-
item the way that the
Sure.
discussion is of the other one.
I just think that's our, you talk about talked about hookah lounges in the grocery store. I think, for me, the biggest issue I always hear is you guys have all these vacant storefronts, you don't do anything with them. And we know that we don't own them, and, there's this perception that the city is just keeping everything vacant. But if we can help attract businesses into those storefronts, and obviously foot traffic is what we all want. I just would hate to hinder it, but if no one's beating down the door, then
Would
there's
it be
much
an
to do
easier
about
sell
nothing.
if they had that incentive? Do you think that would be like opening the doors to?
For a business to come in. I like Jill's idea of increasing the amount. With our facade program, we've expended that program fully, and I think that was successful. And that was a $7,500 grant, so if we can maybe up the retail and restaurant slightly.
Couldn't we just do an exception as opposed to doing 8,000 as a top number? Like if someone came in and said, listen, and the reason why I asked that is, someone came in and said, listen, I want to put this fantastic restaurant on the first floor of a property that's not developed yet. The developer wants to come in and redevelop the property, he's gonna apply for a grant. I would like to come in behind him and put this restaurant on the first floor after he brought up the code, okay? But I need $18,000 to do it. Could that be an exception to? Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying why.
And keep in mind, with the retail and restaurant, the building owner doesn't have to bring, the whole entire building up to code like
Right.
the PEP program. So the incentive was, I think, meant towards the business to come in.
Sure.
And with fit out and that sort of thing.
Primarily tenant fit out, and I think, Kristen, you'll remember this, that 75% for the improvement to the property for the tenant fit out with only 25% working capital. Which if you have high-risk retailers that don't create longevity, that you still have the property improvement.
You said the retail and restaurant, the funding for that is coming from state funding?
From state funding, right?
They don't have any caveats as to what the grant amounts, I mean, basically.
Sure, go ahead, I'm
You
sorry.
said we have like 49,000 remaining in that. Could 49,000 be a lump sum, we have a project that's so grand that we want to give 49,000 to that one project?
They're pretty flexible with us, so we could make the case to them. There is a deadline to spend the balance on this money, so I think they're looking for us to push it out. So I think they would be open to that. It is the same grant funding source as our facade program, and as Danelle mentioned, we've expended out our facade allocations for this year through a grant. So the state is open to us using the Community Legacy Grant for either retail restaurant attraction or facade improvement.
Okay.
So if you're looking at opening a restaurant,
Do it
now
now.
is the time. CJ, make sure you write
Yeah.
that
Headline.
headline.
Right,
I'm fine with upping it.
upping the amount.
Fine. I mean, if it was ours directly, I wouldn't be.
I kind of like the suggestion of, put in there that, we could grant special exceptions up to whatever we need to.
Yeah, but you can still increase the amount and still accept granted.
Right, can we do both? Can we say 8,000 and
special
exceptions above?
Sure.
On a
Whatever
case-by-case
Yeah.
basis?
I don't think you limit yourself.
Any developers in the audience?
Successful developers.
Or maybe one in the room, I don't know.
So it'll be a positive article in the Mars paper.
Yes.
The PEP, conversely, the PEP is no grant, no state funding, right? That's us.
Okay. Is that it then for Jill and Danelle? Cool, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, looks like the next thing up is a redesigned street pole banners. Amanda, exciting stuff.
Good evening. We actually, I'm gonna pass around,
You had a purpose.
had a,
I didn't even know that was on
I like the present,
so
and
we
the
are
snowman,
here,
and the Christmas tree.
we are here to, talk about redesigned street pole banners, and with me is Aaron Pedernans. Close enough. Who is our design chair for the Main Street Hagerstown, program. And him, along with other Main Street volunteers, worked to redesign not only our holiday banners, which I just passed around the updated version that we just got in on Sunday from our designer, but also looking at the 9-month banners. We were looking for something bold and different from what you normally see in downtown. So the 9-month ones are more comic pop art like, and then we just have the bold holiday banners as well. Would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of the redesign was, well, we needed to get new banners, but the goal of the design itself was to create something that was memorable, because how many people at the table could describe what our current banners look like?
Ugly.
Exactly. So, something that someone talks about and notices, looks up.
Did they see the concept for the non-holiday ones?
Yep.
Okay.
In the packet.
Yeah, so they'll have, I think
What are these
funny
for?
little sayings, huh?
What are these for?
Those are in place of the ones that are there now.
For holiday purposes?
No,
or-
those are not the holiday.
Year-round.
The sheet with the 4 of them on there are the year-round ones.
These are gonna be up the whole year?
Yep, and then the holiday ones are the
Yeah,
ones that,
I mean, I'm just gonna be very honest, I'm not. Maybe it's the paper, maybe it's the colors that
Maybe
come
it's
out
the
of
dots
the paper.
around it, I don't know. Throw 'em in.
I'm feel like I'm the artsy weirdo of the group, and I cannot imagine driving downtown and seeing these. I love the Christmas ones or the holiday ones. These,
How do you really feel?
the goal is,
so if you're asking for an
the goal is to
opinion,
have people talk about it and
well,
notice it.
they're certainly
That
gonna
is the
talk
goal.
about it,
Believe
yeah.
me, I'm pro with that with the pod out at City Park.
Yeah, I mean,
And a grant's been secured from the state for creating them,
For printing them.
yes.
And I know this isn't exactly related, but I know that we had an email come through with other, I guess, items that are gonna be put up. And they're literally in contrast with one another.
well, I feel like we set, one of our goals that we established at the goal-setting meeting was we need a marketing plan. I know we've talked to Wes about it, and we've talked to stakeholders, like, we desperately need a marketing plan to get this community all on the same page. I think it's important to have a consistent message and a positive message, and I'm even fine with a bright, colorful message to get people talking. But in my head, this is not the marketing plan that I would envision having for our city.
So what, do we have access to that?
We haven't, it hasn't been established, it's being worked on.
Okay.
I mean, I like-
Because
I
Main
guess
Street,
the point is we don't have it,
Yeah.
but this is a second set of items that I'm aware of that there is a plan to put up in downtown, which don't appear just in these two items to be consistently related. And so when we met with in goal setting, one of the things that Emily brought up was, I guess another community had said, okay, we're gonna pick a singular sort of visual, theme that you would attach then to that effort. And every associated element of that effort would have that thematic sort of visualization to it. And we have numbers of different thematic visual representations and messages and images at this point that it seems like we just simply ask the public to sort of keep up with. And I guess I don't want to find that we come, great example was earlier we had the presentation on the stuff we're going to do in June, right? And so what happens, 6 months from now, when we're coming up on that June sort of action of festivities, and then that has a completely different sort of thematic look to it and feel to it, and I think that's why when I look at this, and then I see those other representations, and I mean, we have 4 sayings here that I don't
How
know
those sayings
what
tie
relationship
into
they
what-
have tied to those other efforts.
so the Main Street promotions and organization and design all work together on creating that common branding goal and marketing plan for Main Street. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, all of our efforts, Main Street's efforts, are cohesively messaged and branded, and there is a common goal with that. And these were created with the connection with all the new murals and art and cultural trail, and so there is a thoughtful plan behind everything that we've done so far, including the window displays and everything. So so that we don't, because, I mean, we've paid for design and everything like that, so we don't waste money. I think there has to be a sort of a chain of command as far as how the marketing and design happens.
Well, and you wouldn't have known that we had talked about that, I mean,
Right.
in goal-setting session.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be made public, so, you know, when we
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
have
we're
it all.
ta- we're gonna
So
actually-
you wouldn't have, I mean,
Right.
I'm sorry that you didn't know that, but, you know, we didn't know you were working on this either. So, but I think it's really important for all of us to get on the same page, because there are many different people trying to do the same thing to promote a positive image. So
Right.
imagine if we all got on the same page and promoted that same positive image. So, yeah, I think we all have the right idea.
Is there a timeline of when you think you might have that type of image?
We're gonna have
But I
that,
think it
that,
should be a
Well,
community
what's
conversation.
gonna
like-
happen with, with the goals is, I mean, next week, we're gonna talk about the actual goals and make sure that this body is on board with the whole document. And this idea of a unified image is just one of many, many. So once that is actually approved formally by council, then of course staff goes to work and starts to implement, and we would then start brainstorming and however you wanna have those meetings to get that done.
so is Main Street not talking to everybody else, or are we not talking to Main
Thought we
Street?
were.
Where's the disconnect?
There are, for community groups, we're not getting in front of, I think, everybody that is trying to revitalize and help Hagerstown and downtown.
Okay, but you're the liaison for Main Street. So you're involved on the Main Street side, but you're city staff, and you're in the same building with Michelle, or Danelle, and Jill, and everybody else. Are we not, that's what, are we disconnected there, I guess?
Well, I think it could be just a matter of disconnection in a sense of timing, because really, again, council hasn't set their goals yet. We had one meeting and they haven't officially done that yet, and that's what we're gonna talk about next week.
And I would say in defense of all this.
Yeah.
I'm making an assumption, Aaron, that you guys put this together some time ago. This wasn't just packaged together 2 weeks ago. So.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but
They
I
were
mean,
having
I
the
mean, I'm
design
sure that
done.
Amanda knew about it.
No, but my point being is they were having the design prepared before we ever had a discussion.
Correct.
With staff even,
Right.
about having a unified message. They already prepared this, so she wasn't in a position of saying, hey, this mayor.
Oh, I'm not
council-
throwing rocks at her. Well, I'm
let
gonna
me try, I'm
defend
just
her.
trying, no.
I'm just saying that Amanda knew that this was in the works, okay? And it's been in the works for 2 months, let's just use that as a number, okay? And, you know, she's in the same building with Jill and Danelle and everybody else, and she's part of city staff, and I don't know, you know, we had a goal-setting retreat. I don't remember you being at the goal-setting retreat, but we had one, okay? I know Jill was there, all right? So, I mean, just thinking, okay, listen, you know, Amanda should have been filled in, maybe. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe
These
the
were run-
disconnect was you weren't filled in on what was discussed at the goal-setting retreat, and which was a unified message and all that stuff. And then maybe if had you been, then you could have said, well, guess what? Main Street's working on this, and, you know, we want to, you know, bring this to council, and, you know what I mean? I mean, there's,
And I think,
there's a
I think the
disconnect.
decision even is gonna have to be higher than that, because Main Street has had their own logos and everything for a long time.
Yeah, we
so-
have our own.
You do have your
Logo
own,
and
and they
color.
All
have
of that
had
that
it
you
for a
just
very long
described.
time, so council will have to decide whether they wanna nix that and say, everybody, Main Street, whatever other volunteer groups we have, Neighborhoods First, everybody's gonna come together under one umbrella. That's a big decision, and that'll take some time to make, but,
No, and I don't think that's what, at least speaking for me
right, so
personally.
this is something Main Street would have done, would have logically done, because they've had their own logos, they've had their own signage, they've had that already. And we would have to give them that direction
And that's
if,
how they get the grant.
if we don't want them to do that.
But I think just speaking for myself, when, what I see in my head, I don't necessarily mean we all have to be like, you know, the exact same thing, but I think we should all be on the same page. I feel like you guys do very, very important work. And then sometimes we don't even know about it. And like, I think if we were on the same page, like with Wes and his marketing materials, instead of having like, you guys marketing, we have fun this side of the mountain. And then you have that High Rock ad that we had no idea about, that's marketing something completely different. And then you have us going, okay, we need a message. I just think how amazing would it be if all of these organizations, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but what about like a color scheme that works together and a positive message that we're all kind of on the same page. In my mind, I think that's how we turn the tide of the negativity in this community.
Well, especially if you're gonna have words on the signs. I mean, I think that's really important to have, you know, similar messaging, you know, whether it be colors or not, but if the words, again, if these were pictures, that's one thing, but if they are actual words that are going to follow people around the city, I think it's very important to come together and discuss it.
Might I suggest using Main Street as that umbrella, because that is its, one of its charters, is to be that umbrella organization.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think
With
that-
input, I mean,
I think that
we've
the
been
dec-
chugging
Yeah, I think the
along.
decision at the end of the day of what that message and what it looks like has to come from this body. Because nobody's gonna go back to the folks at Main Street and provide their feedback on those matters. They're gonna provide it to us.
Yep.
Right, yes.
Well, and that's evidence, or else you wouldn't have come with this to begin with to mayor and council. You just would have put them up and, or staff would have put them up, and that would have been the end of it.
I mean, we do have it
And we
funded.
would never,
so.
right, and we, that we would never.
So, you know, and I know I'm not as artsy as Emily, but I will tell you that not everyone enjoys a mural of unusual size. So, you know, there's that.
Art's not about enjoyment, art's about the notice and.
Well, I mean, can we have a
But I like the
conversation?
holidays.
Well, that's, I mean, what
I
about,
think we all
what
like
about
the
the
holidays.
holiday?
We like the
So-
holiday ones.
Okay,
We're
that's
good with
what
that,
we wanted
and
to make
Yes.
sure got
Yeah.
the,
Like the holidays.
I mean-
Holidays, well, that's coming up anyway.
Yeah.
That's-
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah, they're fun.
You guys good with that?
Snowman's my favorite.
You guys, the majority in favor.
You don't like,
No.
Cool.
I mean, I don't think they're terrible.
thank
So
you.
holiday stuff, yes. Other stuff, we're gonna get back to
So how,
you.
So what's
how do
the
we
plan?
proceed? Like, I would love to have a group meeting or a community, I guess we're gonna talk about that next week, but like a community, something to brainstorm ideas like these things and other things, like what is our, what is our image? Like, what is Hagerstown's image and how do we all,
What do we want the image to be?
Yeah, that's a much better, thank you.
right, yeah.
There's our
So-
image goal.
I think it should be a joint conversation and also a community conversation, because I think we really need to brand the heck out of it, especially with all the good things happening to turn the tide of the Hagerstown's the worst place in the world.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Sorry you were blindsided. Sorry.
City administrator's comments, please.
I have nothing this evening.
Okay. I'm gonna start with you, Austin.
I just wanted to point out and congratulate everybody that worked on the mural under the railroad bridge on Memorial. It was really nice to see people working on that and all the cooperation. And you know, I think that was something that seemed to come together very nicely when, you know, the city took care of smoothing the surface, and then people came and contributed, and they got it done, and it looks good.
Cool. Lou.
I would agree with Austin, and I would also emphasize the mural that's going up at University Plaza. I think it's just wonderful. I was in Philadelphia a couple weekends ago. I was amazed at the amount of murals in Philadelphia. And speaking to the our artist at university, he said that's known as the mural capital of the world.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but there's sure a lot, and it beautifies our city. I think for the amount of money we spend. And Bob, what I would say to you about the mural of unusual size and about the pod, I think the answer to that is more murals that aren't like that. And I'm the first.
I never
one to
mentioned
say-
the pod, buddy.
No, I know that, but I'm the first one to be the first one to say other people should choose the art, because if I choose it, I know everybody will be unhappy. But I think it's a wonderful thing that's going on. I think it does wonders for the town. I think it's what we're gonna be doing, the underpasses are gonna be positive, and I think that's another way to give us a positive feeling
Sure
about
it is.
Hagerstown. When you walk around and see this, and you know, I think the first mural we did was a vision to Basil. And I would note again that most graffiti people see themselves as artists, and that's why these things do not get vandalized.
Yeah, well, I'd like to point out something on that too, though, and I don't know what we can do about it, but if anybody does decide to spray paint over any of these things, what can we do?
Well, I know in the mural of unusual size, there is a coating on that I understand graffiti can be taken off cleanly and easily.
Can we put that coating on?
One of the
Because that was our
expenses.
responsibility to put
Oh,
this.
sure, yeah, I mean, that was part of, yeah.
That it?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Shelley?
So I had the privilege of attending the Korean War Memorial on Saturday, even though they thought I was Emily, but that's okay. Not really sure how that
Shouldn't have got your hair cut.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is, yeah. It was a very reverent and beautiful ceremony, although it was condensed because of the weather from July. Mrs. Yumi Hogan was in attendance, and she made reference that when she visited Washington County, that it felt like her homeland, and that she always felt so welcome here, and it was so beautiful. So it's always, you know, in reference to the murals, and, you know, we always take what we have for granted. I mean, we have such a beautiful, beautiful area, and minus all the negativity, it's always so nice to hear people from outside of the area coming and saying how lovely it is. So it was a beautiful ceremony, and I did not have to walk very far to get to it. I wish
No, you didn't.
That's right.
there was
You were
no way
pretty,
I could get out of it, so.
That's right, you
I
couldn't.
wish every event was right outside the door. I couldn't come back in, but anyway, it was lovely.
Kristen? Emma? I don't have anything either. Thank you. We're adjourned. See you next week.
Good job.